Hi everyone. I think there's some stories that should make headline news but don't. And what I'm going to be talking about here, I think, is a good example of that. I mean, it's getting coverage because obviously I wouldn't know about it if it wasn't. But to me, this is a sort of disaster that really should be a big news story, and it just relegated for whatever reason it is. Um, so I'm going to do my tiny little part by talking about it. Um, I'm referring to the devastating floods in Nigeria. Now, Nigeria's experienced flooding before in 2022. There were severe floods that left over 600 dead. But I think these latest floods in the town of Mokwa may be among the worst ever. If you are Nigerian, let me know your thoughts. What's the situation where you are? How do people feel about the response? Is there fear? Is there anger? Just let me know your thoughts on this. I'm going to just read out the BBC article on it. And it goes without saying, my thoughts with all those impacted. I can't imagine what it's like to lose everything. I can't fathom that. I have sympathy, but I can't say that I understand what it's like in that position. But I think this also reiterates, just I'll say this briefly in passing before I get into the main article, that whether you're a climate change skeptic or not, I think it's irrefutable that floods are increasing. I think this sort of thing is happening. I mean, I was going to say every year. Sure, there were natural disasters in the past, but this sort of frequency of severe flooding seems to be on the increase. Um, I mean, even in Europe, we've had devastating floods in recent years in Germany, in Spain, with hundreds of deaths. And in developing countries, often the impact's even harder because the infrastructure is challenged to begin with. So, without further ado, I'm just going to read this out. I'm going to try and pronounce names as best as possible. The report's by Azizat Olaoluwa and Cecilia Macaulay. So bear with me. It's something of a long article, but I think the details are important. The official death toll after deadly floods hit the Nigerian town of Mokwa on Thursday has risen to more than 200, officials say. But it's thought to be the main headline states more than 700 believed dead in devastating Nigeria floods. Another 500 people are still missing in the town in the central Niger state. However, local official Musa Kimboku told the BBC that rescue efforts had ceased because authorities no longer believed anyone could be found alive. So it's quite dire prospects there. Floods said to be the worst in the area for 60 years swept through the Mokwa district of Maza and Gulwan Hasawa after torrential rains. In an effort to prevent disease in the area, authorities will soon start to dig out corpses buried underground, Mokwa's district head Mohamedou Aliyu said. Recounting scenes of catastrophe, local residents told the BBC that they saw their homes and family members get washed away. Horrendous. One man, Adamu Yusuf, lost his wife and newborn baby. I watched helplessly as water washed away my family. I survived because I could swim, he told the BBC. Another resident, Suleiman, said the floods had left him homeless and destroyed some of his cash business profits. I lost at least $1,500 to the floods. It was the proceeds from the sale of my farm produce the previous day. I contemplate going back to the room to get it, but the pressure of the water scared me. Some local residents have said that the flooding was so devastating because a nearby dam had burst. However, the authorities have not confirmed this. Residents said the pressure of the floodwater was so intense that bodies had been washed up in the town of Rabat, at least an hour's drive from Mokwa. Mokwa's deputy vice chairman Musa Kimboku said they had told neighbouring villages to bury any corpse that they could find. District head Mr. Liu said that some bodies were unrecoverable if they had gone through the river Niger. On Sunday, the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, announced it had started the process of providing relief packages to people affected. The agency added in a post on Facebook that roads and bridges were also affected by the flood, which has had a knock-on effect on the local economy and traffic. The Nigerian Red Cross also released a statement on Friday saying the floods had caused significant loss of life and widespread distress. Floods are not uncommon during the Nigerian rainy season, which lasts from April until October. In 2024, Nigeria experienced flooding from heavy rain, which caused deaths and drove people from their homes. There was also severe flooding in 2022, where more than 600 died and 1.3 million were displaced. That's what I was referencing at the start of the video, because that's the one that I thought of when I was reading it. I remember hearing that year was particularly bad. And there's an image here, I'll put this in the link, showing an image from March 2024 and now what it looks like at the end of May this year. And that's the article. So I read it was a longer article earlier, but anyway, that's yeah, it's awful. I mean, I just can't imagine what that is like to lose your entire family in an instant and lose your belongings, lose everything. It's horrific, and I just hope the authorities can do as much as they can without any hindrance. This sort of thing is going to happen a lot more in the future. Unfortunately, I think that seems to be the case. I think it's fair to say this isn't some of the worst floods in Nigeria in recent years. It's some of the worst floods in the world in recent years. But it's increasing and it's happening a lot in Southeast Asia, in East Africa, in West Africa. Um, I mean, this is a problem all over the world. And like I say, it's affecting Europe as well. So it's not just developing countries where you might say, well, because the infrastructure is a problem, that's, the death toll's higher. But we're seeing now hundreds of people also killed in Europe. So this is a problem that's affecting the whole world. And yeah, I'm just making this video to put it out there because, like I say, it's not the sort of thing that gets headline news. I mean, if I was the editor of the BBC or another major network, I'd probably make this the main headline and follow on the reports from Gaza and Ukraine, which are of course are very important. But um, 700 people dead. I mean, that's a major disaster. Let me know your thoughts, especially if you're a Nigerian or indeed if you're from a country that's also been affected by flooding. Um, Where I live in Sunderland, we're on somewhat high ground, so even when it rains heavily, we don't tend to get major flooding. But other parts of the UK, certainly the south of England, could get serious flooding, and um, even in the UK, the world's sixth biggest economy, people can lose their homes. So the power of nature, the power of flood water is devastating. I had a tiny fraction of this whereby I had an old book from Romania. It was actually Moravian churches in Romania, in Romania, and it was basically ruined from flood water earlier this year. I live in an old house, and some rainwater had got in, and it destroyed that book. Luckily, I managed to salvage some of the plates. They were basically plate prints of photographs of the church, but the binding and all was totally ruined. Now that's a tiny fraction of what others go through, so I can only imagine. Let me know your thoughts, especially if you're Nigerian.